Welcome to the fifth devlog for Superstar Shooter 16. I'm going to start by going into the overview. We're basically just mapping out progress and seeing where we're at in terms of getting to the Atari VCS launch. Going to look at the roadmap. Then I've been very fortunate to have a few people help me out with QA, so we're going to go through their notes and I'll discuss kind of what I can do, what I can't. Uh, I also got some general community feedback. That's been awesome as well. So I'll briefly discuss what I can and can't do there. Then we're going to look at the new roadmap. The old roadmap is kind of too vague, and there's things on there I'm decided I'm not going to do, and there's a whole bunch of things I've added on that I definitely want to do based off of all the awesome feedback I've been getting. We're going to look at gameplay. Gonna state up front that I've got a new shader in there that I think is really cool. It gives a really nice retro look, so that's gonna be fun to watch. And I'll conclude as usual by discussing plans going forward for the next few weeks. Okay, so in terms of the current roadmap, you can more or less see what's been done here. As a surprising one right at the bottom, the performance upgrades. So I've actually had some testing done on the Atari VCS using Windows. One of my QA people did that. That's Kaz, and we're good. We're hitting 60 frames a second. So basically, no worries there. There's a few little tweaks I can make that I will likely make to decrease the GPU load, but it's good. So variants of existing enemies, that's basically been the major focus here these last couple weeks, as well as balancing out the game difficulty, which all more or less ties into the same thing, and score system balancing as well. Basic idea behind the score system balancing is like the easier enemy variants are going to give less points, the harder variants will give more points. And then the rest of those last few items there are more or less dependent on me getting a VCS unit to work with. That's an ongoing process. It'll come. I'm not very concerned about it, but just takes a little time. Okay, so let's dive into some notes. These came from Kazdan from Kraz Productions. So he's discussed how important leaderboards are going to be. He's given suggestions for how to structure the leaderboards. Tons of great ideas there. I'm planning to basically act on everything he's suggested in terms of leaderboards. I will work with him to make sure that I'm giving the community exactly what they're expecting. I will more than likely download a few other games that use leaderboards on the VCS store as well, just so that I'm following best practices so that people can have a fun competition using the leaderboards and everyone can enjoy themselves. Game needs a better tutorial. This is becoming a kind of running theme here. I've heard this from other people. I've heard it from Kaz. I'm going to go through notes from another QA tester right away, and they're saying the exact same thing. So I've got to work on the instructions for the game. The early levels are way too hard. That's based on the last build. There's been a recent update, so that issue has been resolved, but it was a very good point. More health bonuses earlier in the game, similar thing. Extremely good point. I think we're good now. Put the Fuji symbol somewhere in the game, preferably as a power up. This is an awesome idea. I think it's a great little thing for the VCS community. I think people are going to love it. It's going to take me a while to put it together, but I'm all over that. FPS is extremely good on the VCS, no lag or drops. Mentioned this earlier, and game's a touch GPU intensive. Looks like it fluctuates between 40 and 90% GPU utilization when we're getting our 60 FPS. So if things get really busy, or if I add too much more graphical assets to the game, or really intense graphical assets, we could run into problems. So I'm keeping that in mind. Or I shouldn't say problems, but just lower frame rates and stutter and stuff that no one wants to deal with. But we're good now. Graphics for the random item need work. So there's a random item in the game. It looks kind of like upside down 7, or it looks like a 7 right now. It should be a question mark. It's a bit of 3D modeling work. I can handle that. I will take care of that. Definitely don't want people to be confused. Flashing vignette effect for when the player's health gets low. I think this is a super cool idea. In light of the GPU situation, I'm going to be careful with this, but I'm going to go for it. Should have a way for the aimer to lock onto enemies. I think I'm going to skip this one. It's a super cool idea, but we have auto fire, so it gets complicated in terms of how to actually implement this, so I'm going to leave it be. Levels need to be locked out until the player earns them. Awesome suggestion. I've actually built this already. I just kind of had it disabled. It's going to stay disabled right up until we launch the game, or I launch the game, I should say. But it's there. It's a super easy win for me. It'll be there when it launches. Support for color blindness. This one is an ongoing research commitment. This falls in line pretty closely with a lot of my personal values. I want to make a game that's accessible to as many people as possible. I also want to finish and launch the game. So in looking into support for color blindness, I'm not seeing easy solutions, but I want to do this. So if I find an easy way to do it, I'm for sure going to do it. If it's a lot of work, I'm going to be a little apprehensive, but I do want to do it, and it's something I believe in. I don't like the idea of excluding people from enjoying things. So QA notes. Okay, so there was another tester who wants to remain anonymous. They asked for the ability to control which special ability you're using. So there's 4 different special abilities in the game. There's a boost, a stop, a laser blast, and then there's like a ultra mega laser blast that you get near the end of the game that does tons of damage. It's pretty cool. Each of those grants invulnerability. I set it up so it's kind of a progression. Each one is better than the last one. That being said, this idea is cool, so I'm playing around with it in my head. I might do it. HUD explanation. That's part of the instructions. I will do this. I want to just develop a really comprehensive set of instructions. I think that'll be good for the game, and it'll be good for some other future opportunities. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking if I ever do a physical release, having really good instructions makes the process of creating a manual that much easier. So I will do the hard work up front and hope it pays off in the future. But it's also going to be nice for people who are into reading instructions. Next up, explanation of items and power-ups. Again, more instructions. Sometimes it's not clear what's an enemy and what isn't. I will do my best to identify some of those pain points in the instructions. I'm also going to put some pro tips in the instructions. There's a few subtleties to this game that people wouldn't realize unless they're really perceptive or they play the game a lot, or I directly tell them certain things. So examples of this might have been mentioned before. If you're not shooting, your ship moves faster in the lateral and vertical directions. Extremely useful to know in certain cases, and it kind of forces you to do some decision making. It's part of the tactics of the game. Additionally, your shield recharges if you're not shooting, so it's another opportunity to like balance things out. And it's not clearly explained in the game, but it's there. The text should be clearer, and the player should be able to like fly through the text. So there's a robot that narrates things throughout the game. It appears in the bottom right corner, shows you what the robot's saying. You can also hear it, but it's done with retro text-to-speech synthesizers. So it's not always clear in terms of the audio what the robot's saying. This one, I absolutely love the idea. I'm likely not going to do it again because of those GPU and frame rate concerns. I do really like the idea though. Community feedback. Okay, so I've had someone ask me for a lightning fence on multiple videos. This would be an idea that prevents the player from hiding in the bottom of the screen or the top of the screen or off on the edges. I am going to do this. I had a goal to create a new enemy as prior to the VCS launch, so this is going to be the new enemy that I'm giving to the community. It's going to help a lot with a big problem that I've had with this game, that people could kind of hide in the bottom of the screen. So great idea. I know pretty much exactly how to do this. It's definitely going to take me a few weeks to over a month to do it, just because of all the other things I've got queued up. But yes, for sure. Level select map or a grid system and difficulty settings. These are awesome ideas. All of them take time, and things like the level select map or a grid system would require me to give more money to my graphics designer, and I've gone over my expenses, and I've spent a lot of money on UI for this game, so that's a bit of a pain point for me. So I'm going to leave that one for now. I love the idea though. Been getting a lot of positive feedback. A lot of people saying the Atari community is going to love this game, which makes me feel phenomenal. And as a side note, I did an interview with Kazdan from Kraz Productions. Go check out Kazdan's channel. He's got tons of cool content there, and you'll more than likely enjoy the interview. So I certainly enjoyed being part of that. So please, if you get a chance, go check it out. Okay, so we have a new roadmap. We're not going to look at the old one anymore going forward. These are the things that I think are most important, and they're kind of prioritized accordingly. So variants of existing enemies. I have completed a batch of enemy variants. We need one more batch. I think we need easy, medium, hard enemies. And that'll give a nice smooth difficulty curve as you play the game. The difficulty is going to ramp up, but it won't be too crazy, too aggressive. The later levels are going to be hard. I'm going to say that up front. The Atari community, my understanding is you're kind of a competitive bunch. If people are really out to get each other on the scoreboards and achieve those super high scores, you're going to have to kind of earn them with this game. You're going to have to get good to beat the whole game and to get the high scores. I'm going to tell the people who don't feel comfortable or they're concerned that they won't be able to beat the game, the game one screen is nothing to go home about. It's so, play it for that score. So the electric fence enemy, love that idea. I got to get that in there. More detailed instructions. It's a bit of a chore for me, but I agree with everyone that I have to do it, and I've been told by multiple people to do this. Okay, options menu UI is a little muddy, needs to be a little bit more professional. I'm gonna do some cleanup there, not a big deal. The Fuji item, again, love it, gonna do it. It'll take a little bit of work. I'm not the greatest 3D modeler, but I have the skills to just take care of it myself. Fix the graphics for the random item, similar thing. I'm not a professional 3D modeler, but I made the original graphics there, and I can handle upgrading them for sure. Better low health or shield indication, so that had to do with the flashing vignette. That's going to be a fun one. Pretty easy for me to do. I know how to do it. More sound effects and sound effects variety. This is a task that's quite large. I may or may not do this. I love the idea of doing it. I have wetted my feet in terms of sound design, and I love doing sound design, but it's also something I'm quite new to. I'm not super efficient with it, but it is something I enjoy a lot. So if there's time, I will do it, and I would want to go for a really retro inspired soundscape. Probably use like Atari sound effects and ColecoVision and Commodore 64 sounds, things like that. I know where to get a package to do that. It would be a lot of fun, but we'll see if I get to it. Implement the level lockout, for sure will get done. Easy, piece of cake thing. And then we've got all the same stuff as before.